The Boston Bruins and defenseman Mason Lohrei agreed to a deal on Monday. It's a classic bridge, one that gives both the player and team time to figure out just how high his ceiling really is.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Tuesday, June 24th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today, we're discussing the signing of defenseman Mason Lohrei to a 2-year extension with a $3.2 million AAV. We're going to break down what it means for both sides, Lohrei's offensive upside and defensive concerns, as well as what is next for Don Sweeney. And that includes signing other key RFAs like top-line forward Morgan Geekie and finding a right shot second pair defenseman to help stabilize the blue line. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for about 20 years. Quick programming note, later today, I'm going to be recording tomorrow's podcast with a very special guest. Someone who I've been hoping to have on the podcast for quite some time, someone very close to the Boston Bruins. So be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, so it's automatically dropped into your feeds and so you never miss a thing. Now, the Bruins on Monday took a big step in shaping their blue line for the foreseeable future by signing Mason Lohrei to a 2-year, $3.2 million average annual valuation. And this, my friends, is a classic bridge deal. It's one that gives both the player and team time to figure out just how high his ceiling really is. Lohrei gets a significant raise from his entry-level contract, which was $925,000. And the Bruins lock in a high upside defenseman without long-term risk. With the cap projected to rise, $3.2 million could look like a steal this season and next if Lohrei becomes the top 4D many expect. And this deal gives Don Sweeney flexibility heading into this season and beyond. Now, on the other side of that, you could make an argument that perhaps the Bruins should have locked him in long-term when his value wasn't sky high. You're now giving him time to develop a bit further and come into his game so that when the cap is high, come 2027, 28, when his next deal will kick in, if all goes according to plan, you could be locked in for considerably more than you could have signed him for long-term at this time. So there is a bit of a risk there, but at the same time, the Bruins need as much flexibility as they can right now, and with some big names set to come on the market this summer and next, locking Lohrei in for this pretty reasonable number is a nice little piece of business for Don Sweeney. Now, it's perhaps a bit higher than we would have liked. I think, according to some analytics sites, the AAV is a touch high, but perhaps they're compensating him a bit there for being willing to accept a bridge. And also, because he did have a breakout season offensively. I've also heard some people say that perhaps this is now a more tradable deal. And if they signed him long-term, you're locked in for a while. Signing him for a couple years, 3.2, makes him a more tradable asset, similar to what they did with Jake DeBrusk a couple of years ago when he was in the midst of his trade request. They re-signed him, and many thought, well, that could give an acquiring team some certainty. But for me, I really believe that Mason Lohrei is just coming into his own, and that the upside is worth keeping around, developing, and investing in. Look, he's got a rare combination of size and skill. Around 6'5", 220 pounds, Lohrei combines reach, mobility, and smart puck movement. And that is pretty rare among defensemen. It's coveted these days around the NHL. He took on a big power play role last season, 16 power play points in 2024-25. Second on the team only to David Pastrnak. Yes, the power play was pretty poor overall, but he did show some real quarterback potential there on the power play, stepping up on the top unit once Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy were taken out of the equation due to injury. He had 5 goals, 28 assists, 33 points in 77 games, and led all Bruins defensemen in assists, points, and power play contributions. He also averaged 19 minutes and 32 seconds per game. Now, that you could argue that was a demonstration from the coaching staff that they trust him in all situations. However, you have to, of course, look at the context and check the fact that he was playing those heavy minutes due to those injuries to Lindholm and McAvoy. It was only a second full NHL season. Not even. He only played 41 games last season. He played 77. He's only got 118 games at the NHL level, and the regular breakout threshold for defensemen in the NHL, I believe, is around 400 games, something like that, for average size forwards and defensemen. Let's just take a look here at Dauber and what they have to say about the breakout threshold. So according to Dauber, for a player like Mason Lohrei, so bigger defensemen and exceptionally sized forwards need about 400 regular season games to hit their breakout threshold. And that includes guys around 6'3", 250 pounds or more. When it comes to a lot of these kids, it takes time for their hands and feet to catch up to what they're doing as a teenager, take time to figure out how they can use that size and strength. And defensemen take longer, of course, to learn the defensive side of the game and earn the coach's trust. So that's kind of where we're at with Mason Lohrei. He's got 118 games under his belt. By the time this contract is done, we'll be closer to knowing who he is as a real player, but he won't even have reached that breakout threshold just yet. It could take him until, he's still only 24 years old. Might not be till he's 26 or 27 that we know exactly what he is going to be. And what we do know is that he's got that rare combo of size and skill. He can quarterback a power play. He can put up some points. But there are, of course, some defensive concerns. And these are ones he'll need to address if he wants to earn that long-term contract down the line. And we'll touch on those defensive question marks here as the podcast continues. If you're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, then you need to crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats, to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm recording at my desk, driving around the kids, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. If you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. The fact that wonderful Pistachios is also a complete protein boost and providing all 9 essential amino acids is just a huge bonus. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So the Bruins have committed to Mason Lohrei for 2 more seasons, $3.2 million. And while he's made his mark offensively, the defensive side of his game is, let's be honest, still very much a work in progress. And the numbers kind of paint a stark picture there. He can be guilty of some misreads and overcommits at times, frequently caught making questionable decisions on odd man rushes or overplaying in transition. He often gives too much space or backs in too far and struggles when defending speedy forwards off the rush. Injuries, again, forced Lohrei into high leverage minutes he may not have been ready for, especially after the Brandon Carlo trade. At one point this past season, they were without basically 3 of their scheduled top 4 defensemen. You had Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov on the left side, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo on the right side. They lost Lindholm, McAvoy to injury, traded Brandon Carlo, and while they did bring in Henry Jokiharju, it still left Lohrei taking on a lot more responsibility than he should have been given at his age and in his first real full season or second full season at the NHL. And the big stat, of course, that jumps out is his league worst minus 43. Worst in the NHL last season. Again, not entirely his fault, but a sign that he was on the ice for way too many goals against at even strength. Now, plus minus is seen as a bit of an outdated stat. It doesn't always tell the whole picture because, you could be skating off for a line change when a goal is scored on a weird play or, all kinds of things can happen to affect. You might not even be part of the play itself, but you're just on the ice when that happens. So plus minus doesn't always tell the whole story. When it comes to Lohrei, there are some bigger question marks, though, like the fact that he started 59% of his shifts in the offensive zone, but he still only had a shot differential of 47% while he was on the ice. So you're starting in the offensive zone. You should be getting or helping generate some shot attempts on goal, but regularly kind of pinned in his own zone, and only 47% of the shot attempts taken on the ice while he was out there were for the Bruins. Now, he did have some bad puck luck. The Bruins only had a PDO of 981 while he was on the ice, so his plus minus, again, the Bruins had poor goaltending. Is it poor goaltending bringing the defenseman down, or bad defense bringing the goalie down? That's a bit of a question as well. But he did average 1.3 points per 60, 3.7 shots per 60, and was pretty effective when it comes to offensive possibilities and offensive upside. The defense, yes, not great at all. And that's something that he is going to need to work on. There's hope for him, though, because he was thrust into tough matchups too early. And maybe that will pay off in the end. He'll have those lessons. He has all that tape he can watch over the summer. There's things that he can work on. The tools are really there. Hockey IQ, size, offensive instincts. It's just about rounding out his defensive reads and structure. With more experience, a better defensive partner, Lohrei can stabilize and reach his top 4 potential as a member of the Boston Bruins over the next 2 years. And again, a very reasonable AAV for the kind of offense he can potentially bring to the table. And hopefully he can learn on defense more so that he's limiting offensive chances against and able to help solidify the blue line instead of hurt it. And that will come with perhaps playing more of a second pair or third pair with power play responsibilities. If you look at the left side, you've got Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, and Mason Lohrei. Just based on experience and tools, obviously Lindholm should be a top pair defenseman, but maybe you put him on the second pair as he had used to been playing with Brandon Carlo, and put a guy like Lohrei with McAvoy so they can kind of play off each other. And then you have Zadorov playing with Andrew Peeke or somebody else that they bring on the blue line. And speaking of defensive partners, with Carlo gone, McAvoy locked into top minutes, who fills that second pair right side role? That is one of several questions left for Don Sweeney this offseason, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. All right, so signing Mason Lohrei is a big thing that was on Don Sweeney's summer to-do list. There are still some restricted and unrestricted free agents they need to make some decisions on. Of course, the biggie is Morgan Geekie. He's coming off a career year. He's a restricted free agent, 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, and the Bruins should be looking to lock him up for the next several seasons. You also have decisions to make on Marat Husnudinov, John Beecher, and Jacob Lauko, as well as unrestricted free agent Cole Koepke. Then on the blue line, Parker Wotherspoon, Henry Jokiharju are unrestricted free agents. When you get down to the minors, Oliver Wahlstrom, Georgi Merkulov, among forwards needing new deals as RFAs. Ian Mitchell, an RFA on the blue line. And then, of course, Michael DiPietro, Brandon Bussi as unrestricted free agents in net. Morgan Geekie has emerged as a top 6 forward, put up 33 goals last season, deserves a raise, likely a multi-year deal. John Beecher, 4C option. I could see him getting another short-term bridge, or the Bruins just walk away. Depth upside options in Lauko and Husnudinov. Expect inexpensive deals for both of those guys. They do have a bunch of money to spend as of right now. Following the signing of Mason Lohrei, they're at $23 million in available cap space. And some of that will need to be spent on the blue line. The Bruins need a reliable right shot second pair defenseman. And if you look at a recent article from The Athletic, you see who some of the top options are for a second pair right-hand shot. The big name is Aaron Ekblad, of course, he of the Florida Panthers, who is an unrestricted free agent. Obviously, there's an appetite on both sides there for him to return. He's a high-end number 2, borderline number 1 defenseman. They did bring in Seth Jones to kind of fill that role. He's physical, smart, can eat minutes, move the puck when healthy, and would look pretty great next to a guy like Mason Lohrei. He does have injury history, possibly overvalued, going to make like probably $8 million or so on his next contract. If Florida won't pay him, the Bruins should probably tread carefully here, but he's the biggest swing, the biggest name available. Now, you could look to bring back Henry Jokiharju. He's youngish, serviceable, fourth, fifth defenseman with possible growth in the right system. He did look pretty good alongside Nikita Zadorov down the stretch. Limited puck skills, very raw in his transition game, but would be a budget depth option that the Bruins kind of know already. Not necessarily ideal as a true second option or like a 2RD, but intriguing insurance. Don't forget the Bruins also do have Andrew Peeke. They have Victor Soderstrom as options behind Charlie McAvoy. But again, they're probably looking to add somebody there. There's a guy like Nick Perbix, a bit of a wild card with offensive upside, great puck mover in limited minutes, could develop into a second pair guy. He too, though, is still kind of raw defensively. This could be more of a high risk, high reward swing. Not a sure thing, but potential to grow. That's kind of what they have in Soderstrom. There's a few other guys available, like Ivan Provorov, plays big minutes, not really elite in one area though, and he will probably come in around $7 million, which is pretty steep. The Bruins could look at Brent Burns, kind of risky at age 40. John Klingberg had playoff flashes, but poor defensive play. Probably the best option for the Bruins is another guy in Columbus, Dante Fabro. He was waived by or let go by the Nashville Predators, scooped up by the Blue Jackets, and he has comps to a guy like Mackenzie Weegar, a potential breakout candidate, especially on a team like the Boston Bruins. He's got great puck retrieval and has played with star defensemen like Roman Josi, Zach Werenski, still pretty young, similar age to Charlie McAvoy. Undersized, not super physical though, and may not hold well in like playoff environments or kind of the style that the Bruins want to play. But certainly he has the pedigree. Drafted 17th overall by Nashville in 2016, just a few spots behind Charlie McAvoy. That was a pretty good year for defensemen in that draft. You'll remember the Canucks struck out going with Olli Juolevi. He's only played 41 career NHL games, 3 points to his credit. But after that, you have Mikhail Sergachev, who was taken 9th by the Montreal Canadiens. Jake Bean, taken 13th by the Carolina Hurricanes. Thank you very much for passing on McAvoy, who went 14th. Then you had Jacob Chikrin, 16th. Dante Fabro at 17th. And that's a pretty good group. Andrew Peeke was taken 34th overall that year as well. So you could potentially have 3 defensemen from the 2016 NHL entry draft, all kind of in their primes for the Bruins at this time. He might cost around $5-6 million. Strong upside there, though. Won't cost as much as an Ekblad and could thrive alongside Zadorov, Lindholm, or even Mason Lohrei behind Charlie McAvoy on the right side. So the best fit for value and upside is probably Dante Fabro. Young, fairly affordable, experienced, playing next to elite defensemen, and could flourish in Boston. If the Bruins want to go big, Ekblad is a splashy option, but comes with some risk, certainly. Likely will cost too much. Safe, budget-conscious picks would be Joki Harju or Perbix on short-term deals to stabilize the third pair and provide some depth. Challenge Peeke and Soderstrom for those bottom 2 spots on the right side. So Don Sweeney's next big move could be on defense. If the Bruins want to keep Lohrei in a growth role and avoid overexposing Andrew Peeke on the right side, finding a true second pair right shot defenseman is the most logical way forward. And they want to swing big and go for a forward in free agency. We're hearing a lot of noise about Brock Besser, but a defenseman is going to be priority as well, along with re-signing Morgan Geekie. So it's going to be a big week for the Bruins. Draft coming up. Free agency in 1 week today. So you're going to want to keep it locked here to the podcast for all the latest. So from my perspective, the Mason Lohrei contract extension is a smart piece of business by the Bruins and Don Sweeney, rewarding a promising young defenseman without overcommitting, while giving the Bruins a chance to see how high his ceiling really is. The caveat there is that if he explodes over the next couple of years, it's probably going to be a lot more expensive than he would have been if they had signed him long-term right now. But they're willing to take that risk, I guess, in order to give themselves more flexibility over the next couple of years while they do this retool. Job's not done, though. Several key RFAs still unsigned. A pretty big hole on the right side of the blue line. Some definite needs offensively up front. Boston's offseason is far from over, and the next week or so, few weeks, will be crucial in determining whether this team is simply treading water or gearing up for a step back towards postseason contention. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Join the conversation on social media at Locked NHL Bruins and on the YouTube channel. Thank you for making Locked On Bruins your first listen today. Now check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There's no off-season around here. We're bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Hoping to have a big guest on for tomorrow, so be sure to come back. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.